Good morning and welcome. Thank you so much for being here, for serving your community in this way. I'm sure they all appreciate it, and I especially appreciate it. So we're called to order. We have quorum. We have all 5 of our committee members. I do have a chair report. I would like to look at what dates are available for the Joint Finance and R&I Committee to go take a look at the wastewater treatment plant and have an AMI demonstration. Do you know what else we're supposed to do? I think there's one more thing. Oh, there's AMI. I don't know what else. Anyway, so let's take a look at the dates that you all might be here. And when are you leaving?
I leave on the 30th. I'm back. I'll be back in Cambria on the 13th.
Of May.
Yes.
Okay. So sometime after that.
I leave on the 4th and we'll be back the 18th and 19th.
Okay, so after
After the
the 19th.
May?
May.
May.
Okay, I'm gone from the 11th to the 24th of May.
Okay, so after the.
26th.
We're gone from the 22nd to the 30th of May.
Okay, so June. Okay. What works for June? What are we on? Okay.
Oh, yeah, June,
Yes.
so yeah, that's June,
Yeah.
and we got a high school graduation too, so that's,
Okay.
we're kind of out June 5th through June
Yeah.
11th. I mean, our granddaughter's high school graduation's June 10th.
Okay,
And so we won't even be back in town until sometime, probably in the evening of the 11th, so the 12th
Okay.
or after.
how about the 17th,
What day of the week is it?
Wednesday?
That's a Tuesday.
Oh, it's a Tuesday, the 18th.
I'll be in Lake Tahoe, but I can find a place that has internet. Oh, no, it's
No,
work. That
yeah.
won't work.
Yeah.
Unless someone's gonna do something.
When do you get back from Tahoe?
The 20th.
Yes. Okay, so how about the 25th?
What day of the week is that? That's a
That's Wednesday.
But just having that mental, like,
Switching to the next.
yeah.
Are you good? I'm
For
thinking
me,
of, I'm living. Afternoon is better for me.
That's fine. I like it better too.
I think they had us remove that.
25th?
This is fine now.
I'm good for the.
They did not.
Okay, June 22.
Okay, and I need to check this with Karen Dean, she's
Yeah.
chair
Yes.
of the R&I committee, and then you'll get emails from Haley and we'll plan it if that works for her.
Are they pretty flexible, Deb? The water treatment folks.
Oh,
There was only that one date I provided you that they were available
yeah, so how
They
about
weren't
the
available.
the
We're not.
25th?
every other day.
Oh, okay.
So how about the 25th of June?
I don't remember what date I sent.
That wasn't one of it.
So you want us to check with,
Yes, please.
Yeah.
check with them for
Yeah.
25th of June?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think they had a tough time with the
Right.
2 day.
Let me know.
I will.
Because
And this is
These-
for wastewater treatment plant tour and installation of AMI?
right.
Okay.
If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We do the best we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you. I also wanted to ask if all of you have are signed up for all the emails that everybody gets from CCSD.
Yes.
I think so.
Okay.
I get a lot of emails from Haley.
Okay. Okay, so everyone is signed up. Great.
So I don't know what, I don't know what I don't know.
Right, approving a negative.
Go on the website and then down at the bottom, it says join our mailing list.
Oh, okay, did that.
Okay,
That's
then,
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, that's it. Okay. I don't have anything else.
If I do that and sign up, does that mean I'm gonna get 2 of everything if I make a mistake and I've already started up?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I get two
I
or
get
three,
like
and now I
five,
realize
but I think-
I'm on the mailing list.
Good to be on the mailing. Okay. So is there any public comment in-house on my chair report? How about online? We have 3 attendees. Okay. No, no raised hands. Okay, good. Let's go to then the committee member communication. Do any of you have communications that you would like to share with the committee? Okay. So let's go to the ad hoc subcommittee reports. We have one ad hoc that is happening right now. Do you have anything to report?
We're gonna be having our first sit down coming up on Friday.
Great, okay. Oh, the next thing on the agenda
Oh,
is very
I'm sorry,
important.
just which one, which ad hoc is that?
Oh,
This is relative to the event hall.
Okay.
next is the secretary nomination and election, and I haven't heard anybody that's interested.
Rack.
Yeah. All right, well, I guess I'll be doing minutes and will you help me?
With what?
Just to make sure, you already gave me see what happens, and you need to know this. Haley gives you the template. So it's really easy to do, right?
For minutes.
For minutes,
If they keep it to action only.
yeah. So,
Can I
Yeah.
just comment?
yes,
I'm willing only right now, just
Okay.
because of that
yes,
issue that I spoke to you
Yeah.
about. Is there any way to do it on a rotating basis for now? So that you don't get burdened with the whole thing?
well, it's really not,
I know it's.
it's, yeah. So I'll
By-
just
by
do it.
most-
It's, you know, if y'all can't, then it's my job, so that's really okay,
Oh,
I have a question.
yes.
I'm only saying right now.
So did Haley say that the only thing that's required to be in there, are the actions taken?
Yeah,
Because when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about when we get into reviewing next year's budget and
Yeah.
there's a lot of discussion going on. You don't need to report
no,
to a great extent on it. Well, that makes it a little bit easier.
I know.
I like a rotating.
I'll do them this time and then think about it and take a look at the minutes and see what you think, okay? All right. I don't think we need to take
For
it.
backing up, you're gonna follow the template that she's got.
Yeah.
And you're gonna give us an example of basically the minimum that we have to do to meet the legal
Yeah.
requirements for minutes. Okay.
Yeah, because if people want to know what we're talking about and the nuances and all that, all they have to do is,
Attend.
For the meeting.
well, attend or listen to the meeting online.
Right.
Okay.
And then
I mean, even after it's done. And in fact, I use that when I do the minutes, if I forget to write something down.
And then even seeing the template might do away with the unknown that most human beings hear.
Yes. Will you send them all the templates? Oops.
Those three?
Yeah, no, all of them.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Let's go to public comment then. Is there anyone in-house that would like to do a public comment? Yes? No? Okay. All right.
Deborah, you did have the written comment that I provided you.
Yes,
So just want to remind you.
should,
I don't know when you want to.
you want me to read it?
No.
No, okay, so there is one,
Post it on the website.
there is one public comment. If people post or send in public comments 24 hours before the meeting, they will always be posted online. And when you go on to the website and you go to the finance committee and it says agenda, right underneath it says written comments. Okay. I can just tell you what that was about. Is that where I'm going? Oh, those are the minutes. Do you see it? The public.
Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Like that.
Is it within 3 minutes?
Let me see. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so this is from Christine Heinrichs. Hello, Finance Committee. The payment of $293,612.50 to Bank of New York Mellon in February drew my attention to the cost of the $12 million certificates of participation the district used in 2022. How much is this debt costing Cambria? What was the origination cost? What is the interest rate? How is the debt repaid? What is the accumulated cost over the life of the certificates? What interest income offsets those costs? Would the Finance Committee be willing to research this question? Since the district is contemplating additional future debt, I'd like to know what the current indebtedness is costing the district. Thank you.
Okay. So because that's the only one that we have right now, can you just do a real quick summary of the
Well,
responses?
part of those questions we had discussed, I
Yes.
answered in the third quarter report.
Right.
So I don't believe I include, I mean, I have a debt repayment schedule, so we can see
Mhm.
exactly what the life of the cost, the
Mhm.
life of the loan.
It's
is.
like how much your house is gonna cost when you
Yes.
do a 30-year loan.
So I. Mhm.
So this is the only debt that the
No.
CS
No, that it is.
general obligation, or, I mean, what kind of debt is it?
These are general obligation bonds.
Okay,
Yes. There is more debt, which I have a presentation in the third quarter report that speaks to all the debt that we have. And so, Deborah and I worked on
Yeah.
the best way to answer this question, because I do have some of the information, and part of that is this debt summary that I provide, and so I included a little more information, and it includes all of the debt that we're currently in at the district. The origination cost, I don't think I included them in there, and I believe it was about 297,000 or something like that. I don't have the exact amount in front of me. I'm just looking at these, and what interest income offsets those costs. So the wastewater fees pay for the debt service payments on these debts. So any interest income that the wastewater fund generates over the year based upon their reserve balances could be theoretically used to pay those, that those monies are all used to pay all of the expenses for wastewater throughout the year, which would include any debt service payments.
And it's contained within an enterprise fund, therefore
Correct.
it's all serviced by.
Yeah, it's not general.
Right, so.
Correct, yes. It's not general fund. It's, the enterprise funds are very separate, which is the water fund and the wastewater fund. We keep those funds separate as well.
What's the interest rate?
Well, the interest rate is, I have an average, again, I'm gonna defer to, and we can talk about it when we look at the third quarter report,
Yeah,
because I have
we're
the
gonna talk
average.
about a
But
lot
there
of
was,
these things.
there was different issuances of bonds, so there's like 3 or 4. So I have an average rate in there because they're a little bit different per issuance. The bond sale was comprised of like different, I think it's, in terms, and I came to the district right as this sale was happening, so I wasn't involved in that, and it's pretty complicated bond sale, so.
Oh.
There is a lot of information which I can provide too, as far as our, vendors that we used, the consultants that we used when the district was going through this bond sale, had a lot of presentations and, talked about this at length.
And what was the date of the board meeting?
August. It's August. Let me find it. Was in 2022, I believe. And I'll have to send you the exact date.
Suffice to say, it's probably.
It's like August.
Favorable to what you could get today.
Yes.
And-
So,
And to Denise's point, when we talk about the debt obligation, the payments all of that has been fixed and has been since we started the SST project. So the debt service, the debt payments, those have all been public, made public. It's all outlined very well in that staff report back from August of 22. And if anybody had any questions about what we're paying per month, year, interest rate, it's all there in black and white. So a lot of these questions can be answered by just going back to the staff report. But Ms. Fritz will pull some of that information forward. And try to
Yeah, and I included some of it in the third quarter report, and I think comments in here, you guys can tell me if you want more information included, to to answer these questions. So I'm just looking at
Is your reaction that the staff report would answer a lot of those questions?
I would say that the staff report from August of 22, when the bonds were in place, has everything that you'd want to know about payment structure, interest rate, all of those things. And then Ms. Fritz is also adding some of that information into her third quarter report.
Yeah, we're
Yes,
gonna.
in a summarized form, that from August, you had the consultants who are giving presentations, answering questions. So some of the questions you may have may be answered by them. So that's why that's informative.
Let's hold back, listen, let you do your report and then
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you
And then-
guys
I think
can
it's
say, I
gonna
mean, if
circle
we
back
wanna
on
research it
Ms.
more, if we
Fritz's,
wanna
question to make
Yeah.
sure it's completely.
add more information, we certainly can.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of information. Yes.
I hope I'm not out of line here, but my question really is does this justify an expenditure of staff time? If this information is public and generally available to people, but to do their own research?
Well, I think you've already responded to the email, right? Or did you?
No,
say-
I think you made a response,
That's
and we
right.
were gonna address it
In here.
here in the committee, and like I said, I did summarize some information so you all can, which summarizing the debt information was asked for by President Scott, I think last year.
I just wanted to know, how much money do we owe
Yeah.
everybody?
And so when this
Yeah.
question came in, I added a little more detail to that presentation, so you all can give me your feedback on, does that make sense? Does this provide it, as far as some of the specifics, like the origination cost and all of how the bonds are structured and all of that, I would defer back. I would have to go back to that August meeting and listen to all that information and summarize it, because again, I was not here. Issuing bonds is a complicated task. It is not, it's not like just going to your bank and getting a loan. So there's a lot of nuances, the questions, so,
So let's go
yeah,
ahead.
anyways.
Yeah, so let's go ahead, and I don't see any other hands. And is there anything in-house? No? Okay. Let's go to the consent agenda. And this is just a whole bunch of minutes. So does anyone have any edits, additions, deletions, anything for these minutes? It's for January 10th, February 24th, February 26th, which was our joint special meeting meeting out at the WRF. Anyway, any edits to these? And if not, then we just accept the consent agenda as it is. So,
You need a motion for that?
well, let's see if there's any.
No, I was just
Okay.
gonna.
You were gonna do it
Question.
too? Okay. Any questions or anything? Any public comment? Any public comment in-house on those minutes? Sure. You may have that. Okay, yes, I do. I would like to have a motion.
Motion to accept the consent agenda.
Yes.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hey, everybody, good. All right. Let's go to regular business then, and this truly is our very impressive. I want to say CFO. Yeah, Ms. Fritz is going to give us a summary and answering questions and taking feedback from agenda item 4A, which is the review of the third quarter budget report and staff recommendations. And I'm sure all of you have read every single everywhere, and you have all kinds of questions. So go right ahead. Thank you.
So, and I'm gonna kind of go into a little more detail because we have some new members and I know people are listening, but we have an agenda number, item 4A, review of the third quarter budget report and staff recommendations. So generally, we give a quarterly report, so 4 times a year. And the finance committee reviews that and gives any feedback, and makes, you know, any suggestions that we then move on to the board. And then the board accepts, the quarterly report. So
So this will be in
next month.
May.
May, yes. And then we do a fourth quarter report, which is a little difficult because right as year's ending, we do a fourth quarter report. But we give it before we like officially close the books, just because of timing we have to, but it is a good summary of where we ended the year. And then, you know, we come on through with the preliminary budget and all of that. So we're entering into that cycle. So it's kind of a busy time for finance committee. So in this third quarter report, I'm highlighting that we made 5 budget adjustments. And so I've listed them all here. These are budget adjustments are approved by the board of directors. So for various reasons. So there's not usually this many, so I'm just gonna go through them really quickly. There was an adjustment to increase money towards the coastal development permit costs. There was a budget adjustment to purchase Esri GIS services that is going to help with fire department and water and wastewater.
Can you tell them what that is?
So Esri is a program, they're gonna come in and they're gonna help basically like GIS map all of our open spaces, all of our lots. So for the weed abatement program, we've tried a couple different programs now, and because of the cellular service in the district, the ability to get to a specific lot, take pictures, upload it to the system is not working very well.
Right.
And so Esri is going to essentially integrate all of that and plumb it into their software to where our fire department staff can go out with it preloaded. They can go in, take pictures and have all the lot lines hopefully correct. Take pictures of any parcels that have passed or failed and upload it into the system without having to be connected to cellular.
I was also wondering why stills of empty lots were showing up on my TV.
Also, Esri itself, like the general manager mentioned, we currently have a program that we use. But Esri is like, I would say industry standard, as well as it's plugged into the county. So there's gonna be a lot of synchronicities that we can take advantage of that we don't have now.
I believe Paso Robles uses it, San Slow City, and then the wastewater and water departments will have all their hydrants plugged in where their different connections are, and they'll be able to do that as well. So it'll be kind of a standalone system that won't necessarily rely on cellular, which has been an issue in the district.
Yes. Then the next one was Stillwater Sciences, was an increase to the in-stream flow study for the water department.
Want me to go over that?
Sure.
Great. In-stream flow study for Santa Rosa Creek. So we did an in-stream flow study for the San Simeon Creek to include Van Gordon Creek. That was more geared to our water reclamation facility and the coastal development permit. The Santa Rosa in-stream flow study is the district's effort to better understand how our pumping affects the Santa Rosa Creek. So there has been some conversations with the Coastal Commission about our ability to divert some acre feet per year, basically from the Santa Rosas. It's pretty limited. And so what we're trying to do is establish some good baseline data and research on how our pumping affects the health of Santa Rosa Creek. And that will help answer questions that the Coastal Commission may have about our overall water use, but it's not necessarily related to the water reclamation facility. It's a standalone, but it's taking a larger snapshot of our effect on both creeks and our acre feet per year allocation from each of those.
Okay, and then there was a budget adjustment for maintenance on the streetlight, some streetlight repairs. As,
And then just, and that addressed some complaints, or, some complaints about darkness and lights being out that I remember from previous meetings, just for the public.
yes, yes. And then, an increase for the office space rent for our admin offices. So and this has the resolution number. All this information can be found on the website. As well as staff reports that relate to any of these items, if you're really interested to see the details behind any of these. You can see resolution number 19-2025. So that, all of these were brought before the board staff report and they approved them in this quarter.
So this, to move from, where go ahead.
I didn't step on your toes.
No, but love it if you would.
Our admin offices, when we moved from the Tamsin Street, basically just was enough room for our admin assistants and then Miss Dodson, Miss Fritz. And they were looking at renting out the rest of that space. And we took an opportunity because we have a facilities and resources department down in rodeo grounds right by the creek. I think we remember some history that's flooded multiple times. We had multiple repairs. It's rusting and rotting all over the place. The roof needs to be repaired, and David and Mr. Geary and his crew are down there. So we took a look at the new strategic goal, which was to relocate that entire facility, which is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars out of the general fund that we're not ready to spend yet. And so what we've done is taken the opportunity to rent the rest of the space, which was an additional, I'm just gonna ballpark it.
$16,000
Well, I mean, per month.
for the year. That was
That's for the year,
Yeah.
but per month, I think it's.
1,500.
additional.
Yeah,
Sure.
Is it 1,500?
yeah.
Not quite.
Yeah.
So it's additional space in the building where you all are. living.
Correct.
So our office space, it's open. It's almost like, so we were gonna have to pay extra money to wall off the
Oh,
space,
oh,
so he
oh,
could
oh,
rent
okay.
out the additional space because we
Okay.
didn't want, well, not that we didn't want it, we wanted it, but we didn't have the money to pay for the additional space, so
Right.
we were gonna have to wall it off. And then, and so I would say staff is very happy with the space, but it's very tight in there. We found unique ways to fit all of our stuff and it's a nice space, but so this just gives us the rest of it. Now we don't have to pay to wall it off.
And the liability of moving facilities and resources, which could be $600,000 to put a new modular building out there, tear down the old one. We're not ready to do that yet, so we're buying ourselves some time by moving some of that staff up to the main office. Mr. Green from Utilities coming up into the main office provides us a little more synergy with all the staff under one roof. And it allows us to pull David and his crew, Mr. Geary and his crew into our offices and not necessarily have to make that new building or relocate it, because it's now a strategic goal, which with our strategic goals, I like to actually work towards checking those boxes, and getting that done, but financially, we're not prepared to do it. So this lease will give us some time to bring them up, and then all we have to do is basically store equipment there. We don't have to worry about a leak roofing or repairing the roof. We just need something there to house the equipment, and we can use some of the staff. The staff can come to our office, and now we have the space for that.
So at this point, is the staff all consolidated in one?
Not all, not everyone, but
It will be mostly.
The leadership.
They'll still, yeah, the management team.
Yeah.
And some admin techs to support the management team, but we still have our water and wastewater folks that are down with the plant.
Okay.
and fire has their own
Well,
space,
yeah.
yeah. But we will also have a
And you
temporary
guys.
little like workspace for different, like the fire chief comes up for meetings all the time and he doesn't really have a workspace. So we're gonna have some temporary workspace where he can sit and work because he comes up quite often for
So-
meetings. Alice, you'll see when you come up, my office does not have a sitting space. So now we'll have space where we can have community members come and sit and committee members and stuff like that. So.
You're actually gonna have like a space for like floating
Yes.
staff.
Exactly.
Coming in and out, like
Exactly.
fire chief.
Because Mr. Geary,
Yeah.
he's a boots on the ground individual, but when I need to pull him in to like sit down and corner him,
Right.
you know, because he's out there doing all the work. We'll have space.
The floating stuff is very efficient.
And it'll buy us time with having to deal with that financial liability of moving the facilities and resources building, which we're just not ready for.
Yeah, so that building wouldn't have any staff actually working in it any longer?
They'll be working in it because it's kind of a shop as well.
Oh, okay.
So
Their
they'll
admin offices won't be.
yeah, their admin offices won't be used as much.
And you had a
No, I think that was good
Okay.
answer.
I also want to point out that the board did adopt a new CIP list format, which is our construction in progress list. So we'll go over that in detail in this report.
Yeah. It's part of your.
But it's a new format and and it has been updated with activity through March 31st, 2025. I also include an update on the SST projects, the PG&E IGA project accounting, and our debt schedule, which I discussed earlier.
SST stands for.
Matt, do you know?
I'm sorry, say that one more
Do
time.
you know what
SST
SST stands for? Sustainable.
Sustainable Solutions Turnkey Project.
It's wastewater.
Yes, that's the bonds. The bonds are paying for that. It's $4.1 million. That PG&E is affect the contractor.
So those bonds are helping pay for essentially the entire upgrade of our wastewater plant. And so we have a significant amount of equipment, money's down there right now. I'm waiting for the contractor to break ground, which we hope will be May. Background on that, PG&E had one contractor that they went into agreement with. That contractor didn't meet their safety standards. They had to start all over again and find a new contractor to do some of this subcontract work, which is the actual installation of all these upgrades. They finally have gotten into that contract, working about the last final pieces, and the hope is they'll start breaking ground in there.
Okay, so I'm gonna get into the summary sheet. So it is on page 12. And just for information purposes, I'm gonna go over the headings. So original total budget is when we get the preliminary budget approved, there's an original budget for the year that is approved by the board. And that's what those numbers represent. Then the current total budget includes any of these budget adjustments that are made throughout the year. I make an adjustment and it will show up in that current total budget. As well as there's a process when we get the final budget approved that any constructions, capital projects that are being carried over from year to year, the board separately approves those budgets to be carried forward, right? So those amounts show up in the current total budget line. So that's why the original total budget is different than the current total budget. There's some differences there. And I'll point them out at different places through the report so you can see what I'm talking about. Then the period activity is going to represent the current period that we're in. So for this report specifically, that would be any activity in March of 2025. The fiscal activity, as you can guess, would be anything for the whole year up to that point. So it would be, in this case, it's July through March
Would it be-
activity.
Okay, so is the 184,000, is that in March or is that in this quarter?
184,000 is in March,
Just March.
just March.
Okay,
So the 2.8 million that you see in fiscal activity includes that 184,000, okay? Encumbrances.
can
Okay,
I
go
ask
ahead.
another? So if this is a quarterly report,
Mhm.
why do we have just March?
Okay, so in period activity, it's just gonna be March, but fiscal activity is July through March.
Right.
So we're seeing everything.
Okay,
But,
Yeah.
is that a constraint of the?
It's just the way the report does. It shows
Right.
current period
Yeah.
activity and then it
It's a
shows, yeah,
So it's a constraint of the software?
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
the report. So, so you are seeing everything through March. You're just seeing it in the fiscal activity column.
Just for the public, the original total and current total is a full fiscal year budget amount.
Yes,
I mean, those are 12-month numbers.
yes. Yep. Which our fiscal year is July 1st through June 30th. Encumbrances, is there, So variance is favorable, unfavorable, so that's just a comparison to the current fiscal activity. And then the totals, which can be, if you look at the revenue line, our budget was 4.4 million, we're at 2.8. So that variance is showing that we're short about $1.6 million for the year. This is the general fund. General fund is 99% funded by property taxes, so those flow in very slowly from the county. They don't, we really don't start seeing property tax checks till like September or October, and then they come in pretty slowly, so we're almost at the end of the year and we still have about $1.6 million to take in. So, and then the percent remaining is just the percent remaining of the budget.
But you're still only at 30%. You still have close to 30% left. So that's, if you're looking at only one more quarter, that's not so bad.
Yep. It just can look, people, if you look down here, report surplus debt showing us at the general fund in a deficit of 393,000. That's not where we're expecting to be at the end of the year.
So I have a question on that. So if the property taxes aren't showing up until September and the quarter ends 3 months prior, do we use the prior year's money for our fiscal budget?
there's a mismatch here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
mean,
and
we
then
have to
you're
manage
also-
cash flows, right? So we
Yeah.
are using from reserves to spend to, we're spending from reserves basically, and then there's the whole cash flow issue, yes.
So when you have for the end of the fiscal year, are you reflecting the numbers that come in September after it's closed? Or
Yes,
no?
I do have to accrue property taxes
Okay.
in our current year, so I'll do an analysis
Yep.
of what we expect to be coming in. Because I would say we get our last property tax for the year, for June in July. So I do accrue those in June for our account. So when you get the fourth quarter report, it should reflect what we expect to get in for 24-25, but we don't get them until July.
So up through the quarterly reports, it's kind of like modified cash and then
Yes.
yeah,
And
for the fourth quarter fiscal report, you kind of,
Yeah, and even though they're behind, so for next year, 25-26, they really don't start giving us money until like September. But they're pretty good about, we get everything that we're supposed to get for the year prior in July.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't like carry on for months
okay.
that we're behind in property taxes. They get us everything by July. They do
So your general fund revenue numbers are always gonna lag through the quarters and then basically
Yes,
sync
catch up
up
at
at
the
the
end.
fiscal year end.
yes.
That's the mindset I always have to stay in when I read these.
Mhm.
We're basically pulling from the savings account.
Yeah.
Until we get the deposit.
Right.
I kind of do that at home.
So I pay my property.
Yeah. Yeah, the real big lag is at the beginning of the year where I see that. And you'll see it in the first quarter report. Okay, so then moving on to page 15. This is the fire department's report. So you can see there, we have some fees, other revenue, property taxes, and then they have some grant revenue that they get for the SAFER grant. So if you go to revenue total, it's like halfway on the first page. You can see under fiscal activity that they have approximately $2 million of revenue so far this year. And we're anticipating about 1.1 million more. So I'm just pointing, you can see that. So there's the revenue. Does anyone have any questions about the revenue for the fire department?
Just in general with grants, has the district been doged at all? Not only here or, on the fire, but has there been any impact of the
Anything else?
anything that's flowing through federal or And
Well,
the state.
well, we are not getting the safer grant next year, so we have 3 firefighters that will not. Their contracts end in June. I don't know if what that is, we did apply for it and we didn't get it.
Yeah, I don't know if that was so much getting doged as much as I think we had the safer firefighters for almost 3 years.
Right,
And then it just wasn't allocated again for us.
might just happen.
Is that a state or federal grant?
It's a
That's
federal.
federal, it's FEMA.
Mhm.
For some of the other grants in the district, we had some hiccups initially when they froze all the grants, which kind of jammed us up for a little bit. We didn't know where we were gonna be going. But that was kind of undone, right?
Okay.
He reversed that piece of it. So right now, we're still expecting our EPA funding for the Stewart Street tanks of 375K. Our skate park grant still flowing through the process, and we should be funded hopefully in April. Just waiting on the federal government.
So other than the.
Other than that, we haven't really
other
done
than the
anything.
a grant that may have had a natural expiration.
Yeah, I think
We haven't had any undue impact. Okay,
correct.
that was.
And then,
I was just gonna mention the safer grant had been denied before Doge had even been created,
Right.
so it wasn't anything, it's just sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't.
okay, we'll keep targeting it in the future years.
Yeah, we'll definitely be applying for it every time. it comes up.
Okay. So far, so good.
Okay, so then you can see we start in on the expenses, and category 50 is all of our salaries. And then 51 is all of our benefits for our fire department.
Do you want to do questions on those before we go?
I will, yes, I would rather just take your questions as they come. I think that's
Okay.
most helpful.
Okay, so on the overtime for the fire department,
Mhm.
we've exhausted the
Yes.
whatever's there. Now, is that, as part of that, part of what we did down south? Providing firefighters there?
No, so that's all reimbursable.
We haven't gotten reimbursement.
We haven't
for
got
it yet.
reimbursed,
So
but it-
yes, part of that
That
is
is
the
there.
overtime that was paid to them.
That part, and then we also have maternity leave.
Yeah.
There's been some injuries.
Yeah.
Unexpected.
Oh, sure, no, that stuff
Yeah.
happens, I understand. But I was more curious if we were seeing, if that was gonna be covered, if that money reimbursement we talked about last time
Mhm.
was gonna be taken and covering, deferring some of those costs.
Yes, some of
Yes, it will.
them. I don't have the total amount from Chief Berkey, what that overtime was. Also, the chief and I have been meeting and talking about with the safer firefighters going away.
Huh.
There probably will be more overtime next year, just covering shifts when people go on vacation and that sort of thing. And so we're trying to get a more realistic
Sure.
overtime number that we can budget for. So I'd say typically we don't budget enough for overtime.
Yeah.
We're very optimistic and
Well, we've been fortunate enough to where we've had the safer firefighters.
Yeah.
And when we brought on the 3 full-time firefighters to bring our minimum staffing to 3.0 is what we call it, 3 on the engine. When we added the sapers, we were 4.0. So you could tolerate someone being sick or going on vacation because you could drop down to 3.0 staffing. Now that they're gone, it's going to be a mandatory fill anytime somebody's sick or takes vacation. So that will affect overtime in the future.
Yeah.
Do you ever make any positive, I'm backtracking a little bit here, do you ever make any positive additions to the budget when you have a source of funds, these reimbursements coming in from the state of California or whatever for these overtime? I mean, that was
Well,
unexpected expense, but there's also unexpected revenue.
correct. And I did not adjust the revenue for that.
I just was asking.
Yeah, and that's the first time that we've done, what's that program called, where the mutual aid
So
program that,
we've done it before.
yeah,
It's also. The
first time
problem,
we've done it since I've been here.
you
Yeah.
correct. So we call it going out of county. Right, so we'll send a water tender out of county, or if we have the appropriate staffing and 2 engines that weren't breaking down all the time, we could actually send an engine out of county with 4 firefighters. And that's all reimbursable, and it actually is revenue generating because they're not just paying for the overtime, they're paying essentially,
Equipment
they're
costs.
renting the engine. So they're gonna say your engine's valued at $500.
It is a moneymaker.
It is.
We met with the team in Paso, and it's a moneymaker for a lot of fire departments
A lot.
to do this.
Our problem is staffing
We don't
to
have
make sure we can send it out, because if we send out, 4 firefighters on an engine. And our minimum staffing is 3.0, that means the rest of the department's on duty for an extended period of time.
Right.
And then we have to make sure that our engine can actually go. So typically, because our engine
And
has.
get back.
And get back. So that's an issue as well. We do have a water tender that seems to be easier to send out because that only requires 2 individuals. So that's a little more tolerable to send like we did with the Palisades. We can send the water tender as mutual aid. It is revenue generating. It only takes 2 to operate. So we have done that more in the past. There's also been previous fire chiefs that are like, no, we can't send anybody. You know, we don't have the staffing to do it. So it's a balancing act of, can we have, you know, do during fire season, if we know there's a potential to have that out of county request, polling the firefighters saying who's going to be available, who can commit to weeks at the station, who can commit to weeks on an incident. And our fire department has changed a little bit with retirements. We have a lot of younger men and women for the fire department that are eager to do those assignments. So we'll see, you know, how we do moving forward. You give it up.
But typically I haven't, the only budget adjustments I've made is because the board approves a budget adjustment. I would have to sit and maybe talk to, legal counsel if there's rules in this environment. My previous job before here, I was working at Cal Poly and we didn't make budget adjustments through the year. We could kind of, we would look at line items, but if someone wanted to take from supplies and services and move it here, we just did it. And then we would reflect if we needed a permanent change in budget the next year. It wasn't, we didn't make all these like little budget adjustments. It has come up this year of department wanting to use from one expenditure line item, like an operating expenditure, to another one. And so I'd have to sit and talk legal counsel and see if there's any precedent for like, can we make those adjustments ourselves? Or do they all have to be approved by the board? I know if it's a capital, the board has to approve it, and that's all the budget adjustments you'll see through the year. But I have not like adjusted revenue or anything like that. So. Yes.
So on that same thought, when that check comes in from the state to take and reimburse us for that, where does that money go?
That would go to the fire department in grant revenue, or I don't know if I'd put it in grant revenue. We could create a new account for it that said mutual aid, or it would be in a revenue account.
I would vote for that, so that we have it separate,
Yeah,
so we could.
yeah. I would have.
Because then
The chief and I and Ms. Fritz have had several conversations about that, because that's revenue for the fire department. But in the past, before Ms. Fritz, sometimes that would just be put in the general fund reserves. And he wouldn't be able to capture that later in a budgetary piece.
Yeah, so then it looks like he blew out his budget.
Correct,
Yeah.
right? So if he sends it out, the reimbursement comes in. Previous leadership would put it in the savings account, and the chief would say, but I need that revenue to fix my fire engine, or, you know, for overtime purposes. So.
Or it's reimbursing actual expenditures,
Exactly.
so,
So Ms. Fritz, myself, and the chief are working on how we're gonna
yeah.
get that piece.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll probably create a new account in revenue that would say mutual aid revenue.
For budgeting purposes next year, you just know it's like a one-off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, we will probably budget in
Yeah.
that account.
Yeah.
Because especially with the staffing issues, general manager mentioned and stuff, you know, and it is dependent on the fire season and all of that. But until we establish some like standard, you know, like metrics on how much we went out, I would just tend to not budget anything, and whatever happens. And, you know, maybe we could do a budget adjustment if we know that the staff is going out. So. Any
We
other-
back to one more question.
Okay,
Okay, the very last line on the workman's comp for the fire department at 90%.
On page 15.
Yeah, it's at 90%, which is exhausting that fund as well, and I'm suspecting it has the same. Because your workman's comp is based on your payroll, I'm assuming that's an additional, we're seeing additional expense there because of the.
well, that's actually saying we have 90% left of our budget, so.
Oh, 90.
I'm gonna make a little note,
Oh.
so that our workman's comp is, is booked through the payroll process, but it's done by a journal entry, so the system spits out based upon our salaries and wages and everything, like how much. So when we pay workman's comp, it's a liability because we pay it all upfront, and then through the payroll process, we book it to each department as the payroll comes through based upon who they're paying at the time and stuff. So it's booked through a journal entry. So I'm gonna have to check on that.
Okay.
I'm making a note to make sure this is reflective of everything. So this is saying that that's low.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it kind of doesn't make any sense that it's low.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
shouldn't be
If
that
you-
low, I
yeah.
would say. It shouldn't,
Could be timing too.
it could be timing. I'm gonna have to check on it. So, but that's what these reports are good for. So
And
I
that's
can
why
check
you
on
guys are
things.
looking at it.
Yeah. So it helps me to check, because I don't do all these processes myself. So this review helps me check on things that I need to check on for, much like this grant revenue for fire, that's too low for the safer reimbursement. So I've got to look at that one too and see why sometimes the federal government takes a long time to reimburse. So maybe that's it, but I'm definitely going to be working with one of the captain who's in charge of this and see like where are we with our reimbursements and why am I not seeing more money in there? Cause I should right now. So just gonna make myself a little note. Okay. So down to page 16, and I'm going over this in detail because this is our first department. We had a little more benefits down there, and then you move to category 52, which is our supplies and services, and supplies. Always say supplies and services. So, any questions on that page?
Just a couple of them.
Okay,
It has to do with the, it's about a half dozen numbers down. It's 604450, or excuse me, 60450.
yes,
And then again on 60530, one is the, supplies and parts, I guess.
mhm,
The other is printing forms. So when, not so much the number, because the number is relative to the big picture,
yes,
our chump change, but when you see that, when you start to do the projections for next year's budget,
mhm,
do these kinds of things weigh in? Because like in the example, in the first one, the supplies and parts, that amount is more than what the entire annual budget was.
yes.
For just that
So, and
one.
so 60450 is computer supplies and parts. So, yeah, and like I said, I have a meeting with chief, so we asked about it. I said, you know, did they have some computer failures or something that they needed to replace? So sometimes things happen
Sure.
that would, you know, make us go over budget. So we talked about like potential needs for next year. Do they feel like they're good for this year? Should we just keep it the same? Was it a one-time expense or is it an ongoing expense? So I'll have those conversations with the managers when stuff like that come, and the printing specifically, I do know we talked about, they had to print all the forms for all of those fire meetings they just had, which was a new thing.
Sure.
So I've talked to him. He said, yes, we're definitely doing them again, maybe not in that exact way, but they will be doing fire informational meetings for the public in some of that way. So we will probably increase that budget for next year to reflect that this is an ongoing thing, but we definitely did not budget for printing those things this year because I don't think they had planned on those meetings.
No,
or-
Palisades Fire came about,
Right.
we were looking at these preparedness meetings and then the chief and I just made a decision like, this is happening, we're gonna do
Yeah,
this.
no.
And so
Absolutely.
when we decided to move forward with that blew his
Yeah.
printing budget right out of the water.
So the way that I like to do, I mean, I meet with I give each manager this in a spreadsheet format, and they can go in and make adjustments. I manage all the salaries and they can tell me if they're hiring new people or whatever, but I do those calculations. And so we've met once, we've gone through, I have a list of questions I need to answer, get him information on what actually was spent in certain accounts. He has a few things he needs to research, and then we're gonna meet again and come together, finalize. you know, the preliminary budget, and then we'll meet with the general manager. We go for general fund, we go over CIP list, if there's any CIP requests for the year that we wanna put forward and all of that, and then he'll kind of give, you know, review it and say, okay, this looks good, and then I'll plug it into the big picture. So that's kind of how,
So year to year, it's kind of a living document when you
Yeah.
can create that first budget.
Yes.
It is, and so when we started the budgeting process for last year, we were looking at the fire engine. We were looking at some capital equipment expenditures that would have put us in the hole quite a bit. And so the chief and I talked about, you know, what can we hold off on this year? We had negotiations with the unions. We're trying to staff this 3-0 model that the salaries for our firefighters that went from reserve to full-time, those salaries didn't adjust. They basically were making minimum wage, but at a full-time hourly, you know, rate. So as with any firefighter, you know, who was in the union is looking at pay parity across the district. So we had to go into negotiations, try to figure out how we're going to keep a somewhat balanced budget. And so that's going to play into next year's budget and the potential of bringing forward a purchase of a fire engine, whether it's financed, maybe not, or pulling it entirely from the general fund reserves. So each year it's a moving target, trying to figure out how we can balance the budget while also, you know, doing some of these capital expenditures, while also heading into negotiations again with the union because we're on a 1-year contract. So there's a lot of moving pieces.
Thanks.
and I do want to point out, like halfway, a little more than halfway through the page on account 6080M. Professional services miscellaneous fire department. Does everybody see that one?
Yes.
On page 16?
Yes.
So you can see original budget was 8,000. And then the current total budget is the 20,360. And you can see down below it, there's been a budget adjustment for the Esri GIS services for 12,360, which I call out, so that makes the 20,000. I just wanted to point out how my budget adjustments that I talked about in the beginning look on this report. It like that when I do an adjustment, it separates it out so you can see. And then next year, whatever the ongoing cost is for Esri will be budgeted in the original total budget, and that the ongoing cost is gonna be split between water, wastewater, and fire. So I just wanted to point that out and show you how it looks on this report.
So every time there's a budget adjustment, it'll show up in these reports as kind of a footnote or something.
Yes. Mhm.
Cool.
I can also, like, if you look down below 60930, then I didn't explain this before. So the 01 is the department. Or the fund, I'm sorry. So 01 is general fund. Then the 60930 is the account. And the 01 at the end is the department. And I'll show you how. So this is our chart field string, our chart of accounts are, you know, so it's a fund, department. No, wait, fund, account, department. So 60930, small tools and equipment. Can you see how it's blown out there? Small tools, the annual budget is 15, and then they had a budget for hoses and gas detector for 29,000. See that is not a budget adjustment. I can also detail out the original budget if I want to. I don't do it for every account, but sometimes. I think it's helpful because like that annual budget would represent what is annual. So the hose and gas detector is a one-time expense. So next year, I wouldn't include that 29,000 unless they're asking for additional hoses or whatever. So I can also put more detail in the original total budget. And then sometimes it's a budget adjustment. But you can see that says budget detail where the one above it says budget adjustment. So just kind of how the report looks. That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay.
One last question.
Okay,
Before we turn the
yes.
page. As it's not so much the budget thing, I marked it as a reminder, when it comes to the fuel that the CCSD uses, be it the fire department or the guys driving the pickups, whatever. I know that when I worked for Caltrans, we had gas stations that we went to. They're the county's thing over there by the Pence Colony up on the side there. And I don't remember, it's been too long ago, don't remember what it was that we saved by doing that, but I don't know if it makes the taxes, you don't pay, the state doesn't pay taxes on gas it buys for itself. I'm guessing that that's part of it. Maybe they get some kind of bulk purchase. Where do we fill up our stuff? Do we fill?
Yeah, we have bulk stations at both the fire department and rodeo grounds.
Okay,
And so those two tanks are filled with both fuel, diesel and gasoline. And so we buy that in bulk.
okay, good.
From JB Doer is our vendor. Yeah.
Great. That answers the question.
Mhm. Okay, then on page 17, you will see some additional, operating expenditures, and then you move into category 60, which is capital outlay. Fire department typically does not have much capital outlay at all because they don't have any money. That you'll just see when we get to the enterprise funds, those sections are much bigger, and more to talk about. So, but they did get approved to buy some ballistic vests for active shooters this year. So that's reflected there. And then, category 70 is debt service. So that's, they pay for a chief vehicle was financed. And so that, and you'll see that at the end of the report in my breakdown of our debt. And then allocated overhead is category 80. So basically all of the expenditures from the administrative department gets spread out between all of the different departments. So that's what that represents.
We know that's the old formula,
Correct.
both from memory and because there's no budget adjustment.
No,
So
no, no,
it's-
no.
so there's-
We're
so there's-
starting that new
so there's-
methodology,
Right, so there's the
at the beginning of the year.
original and current are the same.
Yes.
Right.
Before we go,
Mhm.
I had a couple of questions. in this
Okay.
one. Well, the first one is a comment. Has to do, it's that second line, relative to employee recognition, and I'm a big advocate for that.
Mhm.
And so, I wouldn't bother me to see that budgeted number be bigger
Mhm.
so that something big can be done for the guys and gals when something goes good. Yeah. The last one in that group, the one that FHRP, I don't know what that stands for.
So I'm sure you guys have all heard the term weed abatement.
Yeah.
So that's the fuel hazard reduction program,
Oh,
the weed abatement
Okay, I
program.
just ignore that one.
So that budget will definitely increase next year. Theoretically, you'll see up in the revenue, there should be offsetting revenue up in the revenue. We take in checks all through the year when people pay their weed abatement bills, but we also get property from property taxes. We get allocated for people who didn't pay their weed abatement bill, it goes on their property tax bill. So we're also getting money from like
County there.
2022,
Yeah.
so like bills from,
Wait,
from back prior. The years can get a little confusing, but so this theoretically, this expense is offset by a revenue. I don't think it's entirely offset in the year, but it is what it
If you
is.
step back a few years ago.
Yeah, it should
Sync
should
up.
equal out, yeah, but, so that's what that is. So we paid our vendor to do the weed abatement on vacant lots who failed weed abatement in 2024. But 2024-2025, $199,000, $690,690.50.
Where's that line item in the budget?
So that is on page 17 and it's like, it's up in the operating, it's the last line on category 52, services and supplies on page 17,
Okay.
right above capital outlay.
Budgeted for
$6,220.
$100,000, that's. easy
Yeah,
to find.
right.
50
Yeah, it is.
FHRP.
And when it's 200,000, it's easier to find. So can I ask another question about that?
Yes.
Okay, so, I don't know if you probably would be able to find the data. It's not something I expect you to have, but this year's budget was probably based on what we expected to see happen from last year.
Correct.
Okay. And so then this year's comes and that's a dramatic increase and they're probably, is that bill done? Are they done charging us?
Yeah, they were
Okay.
done. Yeah, they're done in August, I think.
Yeah, so one of two things happens. Either there's a whole lot more properties that people aren't doing, Or the price doubled.
The price doubled.
Oh.
We used it, I mean, and general manager can, we used a different vendor.
You don't even want to ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
I do want to ask.
yeah.
yeah, so the price doubled for those that failed to meet the fire hazard fuel reduction program, and then are basically billed for the work of Paradise Tree Service, which is our contractor. In previous years, it was done by a local contractor that just could not keep up with the amount of work in the district. In order to weed abate it by our deadline, we were pushing, there was lots that had failed to meet compliance and were not weed abated heading all the way into prime fire season. And so when I first showed up in 2023, it's all we heard about was how many lots were not weed abated in the district.
Yeah.
This is around the time of the fire in Hawaii, I believe.
Yes.
So
A lot of attention.
It
there was a lot
was
of
a
attention.
priority.
And so it became a public safety issue. So that year we hired him as an emergency contractor to go catch us up and get
Paradise.
Paradise. And they did such a swift and what I interpret, they did a very good job of making it happen in a short amount of time. When we flew the next RFP for weed abatement, we chose Paradise to do it again, and we extended their contract for this next year. But they are much more expensive, but they also come out with much more sophisticated equipment, and they can do the weed abatement in the district in under 5 weeks, where it was taking previous contractors 12. And it was becoming a public safety issue. So these numbers reflect their expense and what is charged back to the lot owners, which isn't popular right now, but
Oh, of course not.
yeah.
But in the big picture, all of that cost is captured.
That's,
Yes, yeah.
I would like to say yes. However,
I mean, if we did an analysis, I would guess we may have like, I would say 90% of that debt maybe where we have to cover it, where either someone argues the bill to an extent where a mistake was made or
going back to Esri, our
Yeah.
system, the lot lines on some of these properties, it's not clearly marked. So you have a contractor that's trying to go out, figure out whose property is what. The next thing you know, they weed abate someone else's property. We charge this owner for that weed abatement. You have to go back, take pictures, try to review the county lot lines on the EPNs. So there has been some money.
I mean, you know,
Lost.
like less than 20 though. I mean, it's not a huge amount.
It's not
10.
egregious, but it's not ideal to
No.
have to eat general fund monies, because there's a mistake made.
So I just want to be clear. It's not, we do probably lose a little bit of money on it, but
And how many of these actually do end up in property liens? You know,
it's not over 100,
it's not over 100.
like 100 probably.
And then-
You can see, like, we do bring that list before the board every year. The board has to approve it to be put on the property tax roll.
And then that becomes another lag, basically, of property tax reimbursement.
Yeah, and the whole timeline of it,
Yeah.
the whole timeline of the program is out there, but like, we are getting to that point now where I just sent out the second billing for people, and I think I had to send out about 120 invoices, to people who still haven't paid. They get one more chance to pay before June, and then there will be an item, if you're interested in watching for it, that goes before the board saying these APNs haven't paid and it's this much money.
Mhm.
And can we get approval to put it on the tax roll? They sign a resolution and then I submit that information to the county and it gets put on their tax roll. And then it's on their taxes for like next tax.
Right.
tax
So
year.
with no judgment one way or the other, just purely finance and cash flow, ultimately that will get paid.
Ultimately,
Some-
we do sometimes
somehow,
have
some-
people
some-
who see it on their tax roll who then complain.
Right.
And so I have had to deal with one where I think we may have waived it. I can't remember, but it's not a lot, but we do have people who see it on their tax roll and it's like, this is their first time seeing it.
Suffice to say with Esri and everything else, there's a lot of moving parts to this.
There's a lot of
Line
moving
item.
parts,
It's a,
and it's fixing a problem that's been in the district for decades.
Yeah.
And we're trying to fix multiple things in the district. This is one of them where we're being more diligent about the weed abatement. We're sending out more, I mean, you guys have probably seen the notices, right? Haley's gonna send out 3,700 warnings of please weed abate your lots. All of those that didn't weed abate their lots and came to us with the complaints or surprise bills are automatically added to our listserv. So it's a movement and a process to start to fix it. And our hope is, as the years go by, we'll see that list of those that didn't weed abate drop. Because nobody likes to see those bills.
For sure.
So last year, there was 290 failed parcels, and we had about 100 that for whatever reason didn't weed abate and got the bill. We're hoping next year or this upcoming year, it'll be
Yeah.
75, you know.
And honestly, with the cost of the abatement going up too, I think that's getting people's attention.
It's an elevator.
Yeah.
And so we do have issues though, where we don't have the correct information on the owners, the names, the addresses. We get a lot of return mail. We cross-check with the county's records, but if they don't update it with the county, then we only have what we have. We don't automatically get information when the property changes hands. So we do the best that we can to update our system. If we get like a return notice, that sort of thing. And so we just deal with those as a case by case. And I also want to say, like, every community does a weed abatement program. This is not, and it's all in a like legal statute on like the process and what we do. And we're sending out notices now for that. They have to weed abate by July 1st, I think. So those notices are going, so there's a very lengthy noticing process, legal process.
It's a safety issue, and as we know with property insurance,
Mhm.
that's an externality to it. It's tough when you get something in writing. First time since college, I've been notified in writing that I might be a public nuisance.
Clearly, they haven't talked to us.
True. But, no, it's important.
Have we ever talked about going into the weed abatement business?
There's been some folks that have, their ears have perked up
Enterprise.
with as much business as Cambria generates.
Well, I mean, if you made it part of the function of the fire department, and keep your officers busy, maybe that would allow you to at least cover their cost and cover those free firefighters. Just a thought.
Charge $200,000.
What's that?
Charge $200,000.
Yeah, unfortunately, our staffing just to do the job of a firefighter, building inspections, EMS response, the amount of work that is there I wouldn't put that under a fire department as much as
Facilities and resources.
facilities. and
Because
resources.
facilities and resources abates our lots, ours, because CCSD has quite a few lots on our own, so they do ours. But we're getting a grant, right, to help with that, so that's gonna be really nice, because it's hard for our staff. I mean, they're pretty much busy, that's all they're doing for months is weed abating our lots, so that grant's gonna help free up their time. I heard a lot of complaints about the poison oak. I don't know how much of a preferred activity doing weed abatement in Cambria is.
The sheer amount of developed and undeveloped parcels in the district. It's just the way we do it, right? It's more efficient to hire a contractor and put that burden and onus on the lot owners than it would be to try to stand up some department.
And Mr. Gear, I mean, they do weed abate.
Yeah.
I mean, they do quite a bit of weed abating, but yeah.
But
Okay,
there isn't really a function, to my understanding, to develop a revenue generating source. We have to charge what it costs to provide the service. Property taxes are a little bit different, right? Property taxes come in and that supports the fire department, but most government runs that the service you provide is what you can charge. So I wouldn't be able to stand up a weed abatement department to generate revenue, just to cover costs, if that makes sense. So it would be a tall ask.
yeah. Okay, are we done with the fire department? Yep. Okay. There's a summary on page 18, which is very nice too. So, I love summaries. So now I'm gonna go down to facilities and resources. I'm gonna go through this a little bit faster, just because I was taking my time, just trying to, the separation. So on page 21, you will see, the revenue. And then the salaries and benefits this is for facilities and resources. So are there any questions on those?
The miscellaneous
43,900, that's category 43.
Yes, sir.
What is that comprised of?
I'll open up my system and I'll look for you. I'm guessing it might be, I think they surplused some equipment this year. I'm guessing that might have gone there. But as I'm talking, I'll pull it up and I can see the detail, but I believe that might be surplus equipment. Any other questions? I should have my software open when I'm doing this, but I didn't open it. New is the EV charging station revenue, so it was not budgeted for this year. But that revenue is going, so they've made $3,500 so far this year in EV charging station revenue.
A lot of that's my money.
Yes,
It
I know. So
When did that go into effect?
this year,
The vet's hall rental, is that going up? Or, I'm looking at what was budgeted versus what you got, so,
yeah.
how is that going?
I have not done an analysis of comparing, I'd have to compare from year to year to see.
I will say anecdotally that it's going up. Because we had some bad practices in the past of waiving fees for almost everybody. And so we most recently have changed our philosophy. Not been popular with all, but yeah, but a lot of 501c3 groups and things like that, we were waiving thousands and thousands of dollars in rental fees. And it's great for the 501c3 and we understand it. It's nice. However, it's part of the reason our vet's hall is falling apart, so we're not taking in the revenue to do some of the repairs. We look at these floors, we look at the ceiling tiles, so we stopped waiving fees. I think the only fees that we've waived have been for WIC, women, infants, and children. That would be very popular to charge them to come in and do that. So that was the one thing we did waive.
You
But-
waived when 5 churches got together
And I waived the Thanksgiving stuff.
to give free Thanksgiving dinner to
right.
everyone.
That's fine.
Yeah, that was fine.
So there's a lot of events that are here generating revenue for 501c3s that we used to waive fees for, and now we're saying, we're gonna charge you what the contract says.
Because our rent is very cheap. I mean, it's.
Very cheap, yeah.
It's, so EV charging station actually started last year, but I only had May and June numbers, so I didn't really know what to budget for. So this year is a full year. So I will be budgeting EV charging revenue this coming up cycle.
And then we renegotiated a contract with the Legion. They were paying $1 a year for, I don't know how many years, and so we changed that. So we started off at 500, then it goes to 1,000, 1,500, I think it tops at 2,000, and that contract will be negotiated as well.
It's a year, 2,000 a year,
It will be, I don't know if it's there.
but
it's
it
a
was
year.
$1 a year.
$1 a year, yes. Which is a
Great
good
for that.
hearted effort and great for the Legion, but in order to keep this underfunded facility and resource department, we have to shift the paradigm a little bit. A lot, yeah. That's what we're working with.
Yes.
That's all, we're working with it all.
It's been both sides.
Here froze up. See if it's still. Oh, sure. Okay. Okay. So then the next page, supplies and services. You'll see the budget adjustment halfway through the page for the streetlight repairs.
And the streetlight repairs, what the other really positive thing that's happening is they're changing to LEDs.
Yeah.
Any questions on that page?
A couple.
Okay,
On the about 4 lines down under category 52, the encampments.
Mhm.
That's breaking up the homeless
Mhm.
communities. Yeah. Do we get any help with that from the state?
No.
No, where every community is on their own.
If they're on
deal.
county property, I know there's some property lines that if they're on county, the county would have to deal with them. We don't go on the county property and deal with it. I would say like they're very under budget. David has done a great job of whatever was happening before, it was a huge expense for us. And now, I mean, he has slashed that budget in half.
Yes.
I think just whatever he's, general manager, I don't know, whatever.
I can explain it.
They don't come back. It's just not as much. of a problem.
poison oak?
No.
Yes. We used to contract for almost everything, when it came to encampments and weed abatement in the district, and we stopped doing that. And now Mr. Geary is the one that is out there. They bought PPE to go out there and clean the homeless encampments.
Yeah.
And they're staying active in terms of discouraging them to be there and
We're seeing it
Yeah.
reflected in the savings.
Serves, this was more in the order of like $200,000.
yeah, I mean, we would see FNR be in a deficit of anywhere between 80, 90, 100 grand a year. And I would say within David, when Mr. Geary was hired, basically, Mr. Geary in 6 months, we went in the black.
So we will sit and I'll sit with him and like, okay, how realistic is it to maybe, we won't take budget from him, but maybe reallocate that budget for somewhere else. He definitely wanted to reallocate some of that money and like do some, the blinds in here.
Stick blinds, wants to convert all of our lights within that's all to LED. Our PG&E bill for this building is through the roof.
Oh,
You know,
more than $1 a year.
more than $1 a year. Yeah.
Let's see what we've paid so far in electricity. 2,300.
Yeah.
No, wait.
Oh, no.
Electricity is
24,
25,000.
25,000, sorry.
Right at 25 grand.
Yeah.
Yikes.
So, yeah, so we'll be looking at those line items and none, we won't take any more money from the FNR department because they're slashed pretty tight, but we might I mean, if he really feels he can keep those costs down, we'll probably reallocate that to some other.
The 3 words. recognition.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, the next one is the third up from the bottom, the utilities water.
Yes.
What water is that?
We charge our departments for their water usage.
Oh, you do?
Mhm.
Oh.
So it's an internal meter process, so my accounts payable technician manages that. And so she does a process and we
Sign.
create bills basically for internal and charge them for water.
Good to know that.
Yes.
Do you have a flow device? So they.
We are connected to AMI, so.
Love that flow.
We've gone, some of these are similar to the ones that we've had before, so I won't waste anybody's time with that. The very last. Facilities and not sure what that,
Yeah, he's had a lot of recruitments this year. He
Yeah.
had a lot of turnover. So that's a hard thing to budget for because we don't know what staff is gonna do. And
what is that? What actually, is that like the ad, placing the ads or?
Ads, yeah, so we'll put it on hiring boards, governmentjobs.com, whatever.
Okay.
Whatever Ms. Dodson uses when she does post those, but yeah, that can be expensive.
Okay, we bring somebody in from out of town. I don't know if that ever happens, but somebody that it's not a day, it's not like they can drive them slow or something. Do we ever reimburse them for, or is it just that level that we would be talking to somebody?
with a moving expense.
Yeah.
Yes, I think they can negotiate moving relocation package, but that would be at a higher level that. Wouldn't be
That would be management.
Yeah.
If we were recruiting at the management level, but for our union staff, there's no reimbursements for travel or interviews or anything like that.
All right, I'm good for a while.
Okay, the last page there, you can see, I think that's the last payment and I'll see. I don't want to say that, but there's a truck that we paid for, so there's a little bit of financing costs, and again, they get charged overhead for the admin costs. And again, the summaries. subsequent 2 pages. And then, on page 26. Okay, so this is not separated out. You can see here, there's 01 is the fund, so that's general fund, the account number, and then there's a 16 on the end. So that was, if you guys remember, some of you probably do, there was a pros department, which was tied to the pros commission, which was disbanded as a commission, and now pros is a committee like all of us, all the other committees, and so there's not a specific budget tied to pros. So this is part of the facilities and resources department. I still use this for any construction done for facilities and resources. So what you're gonna see in here, I personally like this. I would like to do this for every department to have their capital expenditures separated out. But the skate park costs are in here. And the East Ranch restroom costs are in here. So if you look on page 27, so on page 26 is basically the revenue allocation for those. You can see a skate park. We have budgeted a certain amount coming from the Cambria Community Council, and I apologize, those double entries was just my error, so I can't fix it. So I'm hoping next year I remember how to post a journal entry, but I just made a mistake. Yeah. Well, the revenue is tricky when I post it. It's just, it threw me for a loop. I'm good when I'm doing expenditures, but the revenue I got wrong. I'm sorry. I know it bugs people, but so that we have some money budgeted from the Cambria Community Council coming in, and then the East Ranch restroom has a grant, which we have not gotten the grant money yet. So I will probably have to accrue that this year if we don't get it. I'll have to ask my auditors if they want me to accrue it or not, because our expenditures, if you look on page 27, we've spent $238,207 so far. The hard part about this report, you can't tell, I cannot show you what is for which project on this report. So my CIP list, as we get into it, oh my gosh, got all dirty with my makeup. But you can see that I had budgeted $307,612 for the East Ranch restroom and $197,414 for the skate park. So in that, under the fiscal activity, the 238,000 is made up of both of those projects, which I do take the time and I detail it out on the CIP list. So you'll see that later. It's very manual process, but it is what it is. So that's what these 2 pages represent. And they are technically part of the facilities and resources department, but they're only the capital projects. That makes sense? Okay. Computer is still not like me. Okay, so then on page 31, you're gonna see the admin department. We do get some revenues. We get our franchise fees. We get some interest income, which will be allocated out to the different departments based upon the reserve balances. We get some radio vault rent from the county, like leases some land from us, which I gotta check on that too, but so, and then all of the property taxes run through here. So you'll see like property tax, it's actually a net zero. So during the quarter, it comes in to the admin department and then I allocate it out before I prepare this report. And then salaries and benefits.
Okay, before we leave the income part,
Mhm.
the period activity was for the interest income was 0. So for March,
So I don't get the report from my investment advisor, so I book the investment income from reports from my investment advisors, and they have not gotten me my quarterly report yet, so I haven't posted it yet.
okay,
But it's a quarterly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just, I mean, I have to have this is a quick turnaround for me to get this done.
Yeah.
And so I just, yeah, I don't, it's only April, you know, it's been 2 weeks, so they just don't have that information for us yet.
Okay, would that normally post on a monthly basis?
Monthly, I don't do it monthly, no. I do quarterly.
No, I understand this is quarterly, but do you receive?
Yeah, I have monthly statements.
Yeah. So normally,
Yes, but there's, because of our new investment strategy, like I could post our late. I could post, we invest in camp, which is, a pooled investment fund through the state. I can pull those numbers, but our main investment is with US Bank. And so they help consolidate those because there's like some earned, unearned investment income, you know, it's a little more complicated than me just pulling the number off the statement.
We're only posting earned, correct?
Yes, I believe so. Again, I have a whole thing in the audit, like the US Bank is just a little more complicated on how to post the income. And so my methodology of posting it comes from the investment advisors, and then the auditors have reviewed it. Okay, how we do it, and then we true it up at the end of the year.
that looks really nice though, compared to what the budget was.
Yeah, so, and then I will allocate it out to whoever. And I do it based upon reserve balances, saying that I know how to do it. Or like the only methodology I have to it. Who, I do have, who's of the millions of dollars we're investing. How much of that belongs to which department?
So they get credit for the interest based on their own reserve account. So it's a 1-to-1.
Yes. But the money is invested in a pool.
Of course,
thing,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Um,
Yes,
No question. This says interest income. We have non-interest bearing investments as well. I forget what's allowed, like, you know, like, are we allowed equity investments or group equity investments?
I mean, I'd have to look at the investment policy. I don't think we have those, so.
Meaning like, yeah, there are approved funds that the investment advisor can put us into. So it's only like debt securities that we can invest in.
Yeah, I'd have to pull up our
Okay.
investment thing. I don't know off the top of
That's-
my head, but yeah, I don't think we have any, I don't think he has us in non-interest.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
whether we can or not, I'd have to pull up the investment policy.
right. Buying opportunity right now, potentially.
Yes, we are limited on what we can and can't invest in.
Okay, right.
We have a pretty detailed investment policy. You guys remember? I
Yeah.
think you were here when we reviewed it.
I know,
Oh,
that's why,
yeah.
that's why it's
I've tried to block it out.
kind of. My personal persona, going
Yeah,
from
a lot.
my CSD persona.
Before we turn the page,
Mhm.
the fourth one from the bottom, another workman's comp entry. Where we're at, couple of what?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, definitely something for me to look at. I'd have to go and see, you know. Our labor costs are higher than we thought, or, you know. I have to go look at that calculation. Again, the number that is posted there comes from our payroll system, so they do the calculation. So I'd have to see, I don't really have to up that budget for next year. Our admin staff is pretty consistent. We don't have a lot of turnover, thank goodness, or we haven't in the past year. Okay, so page 32. It's a little bit left of the salaries and then supplies and services. Goes on page 32 and 33. And we did have a capital asset, a sound system, to work on that sound system in the vet hall. I mean, I don't, so anyways, we haven't done anything with that project yet, so, that's on there. And then you can see the allocated overhead is me moving our expenditures to other departments.
The base. Roll cost, this is square footage.
There's a policy that is, this committee did.
Yeah, so I would say we've had a lengthy, that's why the smiles and chuckles, because we talked about it, we had a subcommittee on it. There was a methodology being used that, you know, I've been here about almost 3 years now, that we had really no documentation on why it was the way it was, and we had certain costs and we couldn't. So this committee spent a lot of time talking about revising a new overhead allocation policy as part of the budget policy, which is online. And so and I think it's gonna be a work in progress. We're gonna see how it comes this year. So basically, and I'll share it with you when we meet next week. Okay. I'm sure your head's probably on more information in it right now, but so I'll share that with you and we can talk about what this.
So is this gonna be the first year that you?
Yes, using the new one. So
Okay.
we took out some expenditures that can be more directly allocated to the department, such as insurance and some legal costs and stuff, which used to just be pooled here and spread out evenly. So there's certain costs and some staffing costs, like our front desk clerk, he's 99% utilities, so he's gonna be charged to utilities. And then we simplified, I think, the cost that we do allocate out in a more simplified way. So I'm happy to provide that policy to you and then we can talk about it. There's nothing wrong with simple. That's good. Yes. So I used to do the overhead allocation for Cal Poly, for the whole university. And I mean, my spreadsheet, I can't even tell you how many tabs and this and that. And then as soon as I stopped, they changed it all and they just did a percentage of revenue.
Yeah.
I was like, why didn't you do that when I was here? Or when I moved to housing, so I didn't work in the general budget office anymore, but so overhead allocation models are ones that like you can make them really, really complicated or you can make them simple. And yeah, they decided to go the simple route, not when I was there, not when I was doing.
You know, I don't wanna quash any questions or anything, but I do, can we go to the CIP list so that these people know when we start doing the budget? Because we only have 42 minutes, I mean, 22 minutes.
Okay, let's do that, and then we can go back to water and wastewater.
Yeah.
Is it at the very back? No, it's right here.
Page.
Oh. Okay, so page 65 starts the CIP list. You're gonna be seeing a lot of this coming up. A little legend in the front, and it also gives a timeline of when these lists are created. So if you go to page 66, this is the general fund. And so what you have here is it lists every project, the project estimate, any additional budget requests that may have been added to the project. Then the current year fiscal budget is so that would be, like a roll forward budget, so it's not project to date, it's just what we have left to use for this current year. And then that fiscal year expenditures is what we've spent so far this year. Any, fiscal year budget remaining, then I have over there a summary of project to date budget and the project to date expenditures. So, again, this is the new format.
Yeah, so just, what's really important for me
Okay.
is the rank. And so when you see the B, that means that it's already been budgeted. The rest of them have not been budgeted.
Correct.
That was
Yes.
my simple mind.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Mhm.
And yeah, and the ranking is explained on the.
Right.
So. Yeah, so on that first page, you know, we see the skate park and that one has a few different funding sources, so those are detailed out separately, so we can keep track. People wanted to know what funding sources we have. People. The East Ranch restroom, again, it has two different funding sources, so that's what you're seeing there. It's that facilities and resources, so that's our reserve funding. And then they have a Prop 16 grant. So some of them have multiple funding sources listed, some of them don't. Those are the only two things that are budgeted, I think, for facilities and resources. Where? Oh, yeah. It's over here. Oh, no, and then that Beds Hall sound system. So then the 67 is the fire department. And 68 is the water department, so you can see them up on top. And the water department spans you. Things, so this is where I take the information and I put it in a more detailed format. This so we can keep track of capital expenditures. There, and then you're gonna see. Water takes quite a few pages. And then the WRF. Basically is the permit, is the main expenditure on that one, that's on page 72. Well, there's a few other projects on page 73 that are budgeted for, which has no activity yet this year. So again, any of these that have been budgeted for but have no activity, those will be brought forward in the final budget for roll forward for the next year. I had mentioned that. And then on page 75 is wastewater. So there you're gonna see all of the first on the top of page 75. Those are all the SST projects. So those are covered by the bond. So ECM 1, ECM 2, ECM 3, ECM 4, and it details what they are. If it has a B in front of it, that's part of the SST project. And so it has all of the budget amount, current year expenditures, and then project to date will say what we've spent so far. So we've spent 4.28 million on the SST so far. So if you look at the previous version of this, it just did not have, all it had was basically this is what we're spending. It really didn't have much information. And so this, I know it looks a little bit complicated, but there was a lot of conversation that went into what do people want to see. And I think it's helpful to have, this is what the budget is. This is how much we've spent so far. You know, this is how much we're spending this year. This is how much we've spent so far. It takes a little time to get it all together and keep it maintained, but it provides a lot more information, I think. You know, it can, you know, hopefully it's not too confusing.
It really helps me.
But glad. And then, yeah, and then Haley revised the whole thing to make it look really pretty. And it's a really nice blue color and beautiful.
So these items that are on this list now that are not budgeted and have had no activity, do they stay on the CIP list going forward until the board, for some reason, takes it off?
I mean, I think that there's like different schools of thought and like, so I would say in the past, they just put on everything in the kitchen sink. Right? And so I would say current management is leaning more towards, we have a realistic list of really, you know, and that's part, we have a subcommittee here, which hasn't been very active, but doing a lot, and that's part of our strategic goals is a long range planning, like a 10-year, 15, 30-year plan on projects, like what do we need? And so this list is not a long range plan, so I don't want to use it as that. So I would say my philosophy is a little more like, keep it with stuff that we want to do within the next 2 years. The fire department, yes, it's gonna have a fire truck on there. I don't know if we're gonna be able to do it next year. I don't know if we're gonna be able to do it the year after that. I think it deserves a place on there because it is something we need to keep in our mind. We need to think about how can we get this? How can we finance this, right? Water and wastewater have some instrumental projects that like, yes, let's keep it on the list because we gotta do it, even though we don't really have a financing option or a funding option for it right now. Some of the things, I mean, anything enterprise goes through the R&I committee, and so they can kind of have a little more autonomy about what they put on that list. I would say I definitely don't have control over it. I would suggest they keep it a little, I've talked to the utilities manager and, they have a lot on their plate with projects. There's a lot of budgeted items they didn't really get done this year yet. So in my estimations, like don't load up a lot of new projects.
Right.
Haven't by your work done.
Yeah, let's get it done. General fund, I would say that process is more between me and the general manager and the different managers. So I think the general manager would agree with me to keep that list a little more maintain, like what is actually gonna happen. And then when we do get to our long range planning and what that's gonna look like, we can have projects 15 years out and say, we need to do this at some point because we know that this is gonna fail or whatever.
Yeah, if you look at the fire department CIP list, there's some lofty asks in there that we can't prioritize right now. The engine has to be on the forefront of our minds, for an example, because there's a 3 to 5 year lead time on it being built. Right. So if we bought it tomorrow, we're not seeing it for 3 years, which is problematic when you have an engine heading to its end of life. And that's both engines. By the time we get the new engine, the backup engine will be at its end of life, which we have to target another purchase that's another 3 to 5 years down the line. When we look at station remodels, okay, yeah, it needs to happen eventually, but do I need to remodel the kitchen now? Do I need to, remodel the living quarters? Probably not on the top of the list considering the liabilities we have ahead of us, but yeah, those are things that Ms. Fritz, myself, the fire chief, Mr. Geary will all sit down and try to hammer out. Just like the relocation of the F&R building down there. That's a big tall ass that we know needs to happen, but can we get away with moving them to the district office and kind of kick that can down the road a little bit?
And R&I is meeting this afternoon to discuss the CIP list for the enterprise funds.
And then, on page 80, that's one of the debts. The debt.
So in the one before, there's the SST. I include this on quarterly report. You can see there, it's a nice summary of the SST project. And then yes, on page 80, this is the debt one. I'm open to feedback. Again, this is a new presentation of it to try and give more information. But you can see we have a Chevy Tahoe that we're financing. The water meter project, we did take out a loan to finance part of that project. The WRF construction, we have a sizable loan for that. And then the SST projects are bond funded. So it's different than any other loan that we have.
But there's your interest rate, so.
Yeah. So, and I did include the original debt, our principal and interest payment. I think that's a principal what we've paid to date. So again, I don't, what you guys want, let me know. With some of these, we don't want it to be unmanageable and get too big, but I think all of that principal and interest is what we paid to date.
That looks like a fully amortized loan where, basically you're paying mostly interest in the early stages.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a fixed mortgage.
Yes.
And just to Ms. Heinrich's question, ancillary to it, I don't think there's any prepay restriction on the loan. It's just a question of
Prepay, did she ask them?
no, it is just something I always, because what I'm saying is the decision's been made. It's like some cost at this point. The only thing that we can do about the existing debt pay it off if we had, funds that are needed to do so, because the interest rate was onerous, but the interest rate is better than what we could get today.
And we could make that choice at any given point.
Right.
We could refinance. I know general manager and we looked into, he'll ask that question of our advisors every once in a while, like, would it make sense to refinance
Right.
like the WRF?
No restrictions against.
We've already looked at it, just not there yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. These are all hypotheticals, but there's no prepaid
Now, for
restriction.
like the Tahoe, I mean, it might make sense just to pay it off at some point. I don't, whatever the decision was made to finance instead of some of these smaller like truck loans, or from, yeah,
But only if the opportunity costs on our
Yes.
invested funds
correct.
can drop below.
Yeah.
So,
Which I don't, who knows now?
yeah.
Yeah.
But, it's, I'm
Yeah.
sure you're looking at that all the time.
We have questions?
No, actually, I was gonna ask the interest rate, but I see it's in the table. So
And,
That's blended.
Ms. Fritz did a really excellent job of finding, an investment company for us that manages our investments.
Yes.
And did I see there on the report that we have, how much do we have with them? Ballpark,
I'm 7 million, I'm gonna say.
yeah, about 7 million.
I mean, and it's not, there are advisors, so our investments are through US Bank. And at any moment, if the board wants to, we could have them come in and do a presentation. They haven't done one in a while and talk and just answer questions. I'm a strong believer. We all have our areas. Investing is, you need to be an investment expert on your own. I am not that. So we brought in a company that helps us manage our investments, and I know I feel extremely comfortable and like they're part of our team. General manager does as well. They're really, really helpful, and they would be happy to come in and like talk to either this group or come in if people have more specific questions, because they are like the subject area experts on our investing.
It's also,
You know more about investing than I do.
well, it's also, well, but again, it's like everything, it's all complicated by what we're able to invest in, and they're also, experts in that. But,
Yes.
being responsive to the public and the question we got at the beginning of the meeting, it's good to have that for public consumption. And also, maybe if we could publish what our blended rate of return on our investments was, have the public be able to compare that to what our
So
debt obligation
Blended rate of
is.
debt is.
That
it
would
will
give
say,
people-
they do provide us with a quarterly investment report, so you will see that.
Good.
When it comes out, and so, look at that and see if that answers your questions, because they do
Oh,
provide us with.
Right,
Yeah, a quarterly report on our investments, how they're doing, and that.
yeah, I just want to make sure we're being responsive
Yes.
to the questions that are asked.
Yes.
So I wanted to let you know, we have 7 minutes.
Okay.
And we can't go over, our 2 hours unless you guys want to, but I don't think anybody, does anybody want to go over your 2 hours? No.
Just doing our
Oh.
digital 2 hours.
Okay, so, how about if I just ask for public comment?
Sure.
And then, I think we have someone who would like to do that. So please. Let us know who you are.
Process. I have a question, page 66. Under expenditures, from the community council, what's the, category of expenditure for the 48,526?
Okay, so if you can see, the community council has spent 23,988. And the CCSD reserves has spent $24,538. So that makes up the 48,526. So the 48,000 is a total between what the CCSD has spent this year and what Cambria Community Council has spent.
But my question was, what is the expenditure?
Well, my computer froze, so I can't get in there right now, but I think I have. He has the listing. I'm sorry, my computer, I can't, but we, to our engineer, to the permitting, a lot of permitting costs to the county.
There's permitting costs, there's civil design studios for some of the construction documents, design, so.
Excuse me, for the what?
Construction documents and design.
Is that the estimate?
No,
No,
It's an actual cost.
I mean,
Design of the
Civil
building.
Design Studios was paid for an engineering estimate, but I think that was a while back, but it may be included in those numbers.
Okay, I'm just trying to. But
On it. Here we go.
I don't know what happened to the computer.
So that is actual construction, like
no,
hammering,
no,
Okay,
toilets.
yeah, no.
so we have Slow County Planning, Civil Design Studio, Central Coast Architecture Services, Geo Solutions for geotechnical. More civil design studios, more Slow County Planning,
The Cogstone is in there,
Cogstone, which was the
tribal.
tribal evaluation. A sound study. Slow County Public Works or Slow County Public Works. I mean, we've got charges from Slow County for 600, 7,000, 3,700. SWCA for the CEQA exemption, that was about 2,000. This is all information that came from the expenditure report.
But this is my tracking documents, I just wanna be careful, like, but every invoice, every contract, everything is shared and given to the community council and they review it and pay.
Let's see if there's any questions on what's been spent from the CCSD side or the community council side. I'll be reaching out to Mr. Clark and give you all those numbers.
And then I got one more question on page 27. No, I'm sorry, 26. Where you have the double interface. What is that? Actually triple entries.
It was just a mistake.
Yeah,
I
what's that?
pointed, if you can see, I have a debit on one and then I reversed it. And then, so it was just a mistake.
Okay, and then what is the 13,000?
That is the money that I have on hand budgeted from the Cambria Community Council. That they've given us so far. Or less, I'm sorry, they've given us much more, but we've spent quite a bit of it. So,
So is that all your public comment?
Yes.
Okay, do we have anybody online? Because, no. Oh, yes,
Dawn.
okay, Dawn, Mr. Howell.
Is he muted?
Sorry, I was muted. Just very briefly, I just wanted to express my appreciation to the committee for their penetrating questions and for their close examination of this budget report. It was really good morning entertainment, really good. And then the other thing is I really like the new CIP list. I think it's wonderful. So good job.
Thank you.
Everybody. Thank you all. That's all I had to say. Thanks.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Howell.
Think about that.
All right. Spell your last name, please.
It's hyphenated, Perez, P-E-R-E-Z, okay, hyphen, Sesser, S-E-S-S.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any other questions in the next minute from you all? No, okay.
I did have one. I went back through my list of, on page 50. There's
Sorry.
the last item amongst the
Yeah, that's telling me I'm over time.
that is like, there's the 2 month
Yeah.
2 month reserve for ops,
Mhm.
which is new. It wasn't
No.
wasn't on the original budget and then it got,
Well, no, because it's a roll forward, so
Oh.
it doesn't come on the original budget. So it's approved on the roll forward. So that was something, again, before I got here, there was some sort of discussion, obviously, when the WRF came into existence.
Yeah.
That we needed a whole 2 month of reserves for operations, and so they added to that for a few years. And it's more than 2 months worth of operation, so I no longer contribute to it. But I just carry forward that they have a desire to have 2 months of reserve for operations and, but. It's a little bit, I don't know why it's in the operating budget. I mean, we have, WRF itself. I'm sorry, I don't have the reserve balances in front of me, but it's like, no, actually, we don't have time.
We don't have.
Okay,
Yeah.
they have $1.5 million, $2 million in reserves or something, so they have well over 2 months. I don't know why it's in the operating budget, but that's just the way that they've done it. And again, I need to meet with council or general manager, like, how do I change the budgeting, like how they did it? Because I don't know why.
Okay,
I'll see.
yes, did you have something? No?
No.
Okay, so future agenda items, real quickly, whatever reports that you have. For our May meeting,
Let me look and see what was on maybe last year, because we are getting to that time of year where it's gonna be.
yeah, we may have to go over the 2 hours, but I hope that.
So, look, it was on the agenda last year. We had the third quarter budget report last year. Sound good. We will have. We have that investment policy revisions. We need to do that again.
Extensive protocols.
Yeah. Yeah.
Investment policy, is that a yearly thing?
We're finished with that.
Very much. Right, of course.
Okay,
I just don't know if that's an annual thing. Okay, so the preliminary budget will be next month.
okay, and,
I'm not.
it does say for for 4A, it says discussion and consideration, so what you need from us is that we approve it, or what do you need from us?
For the third quarter,
Yeah,
I think just approve to move it on, okay, to the board.
okay,
For
who do we,
approval, and if you have any suggestions or like comments, you can include that in the motion, and then I will share it with the board.
so do I have a motion for 4A?
How would you like?
I was gonna say, I'll so move, but.
Okay. Okay, so, we've made some recommendations. Do you have those available to you? Well, it says review of third quarter budget report and staff recommendations, so I don't know that we can do anything more. Discuss and review.
Well,
But yeah,
Does the staff recommendation, does that refer to the cover
yes,
memo?
yes. So what,
And to all that's on there is the 5 budget.
Yeah.
So to the extent that unless we've got an objection to any of those.
yeah,
They're done.
We're moving to just forward this third budget
Right.
report to the board.
Yeah.
So that the board receives it and files it.
Right.
Yes,
right,
Report.
that's my motion.
okay. And
Yeah, and I don't know if there was adjustment, I mean, I have notes to go look at stuff.
Okay, well, and it does say review, it doesn't say that we are supposed to take action. It does on the agenda. But. Okay, and do I have a second? A second. Alice. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay,
So in May, we'll have the preliminary budget.
okay. So May we'll have the preliminary budget. All right. So let's adjourn because it's 12:05 and I don't want to get in trouble.
Just for you. One last item,
Yes.
not to get in trouble. If we could, retag the meeting where Ms. Hendricks' question, maybe bring that forward to a link for today's meeting. Relink what
On the
happened
notes?
previously.
On to the 22.
Yeah,
Commission.
22 information.
I
That way,
think I sent it to you
Yeah.
in my email.
Yeah, I'll forward that to her.
okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Need to put it in the minutes. Right. Together. Sure. Your type is-
Yes. Okay. Yes,
Be adjourned.
we're adjourned.